If you put 100 retirees in a room today, only 3 of them would have at least $1 million saved in retirement accounts. 97 would not. And here's what makes that uncomfortable. Most of those 97 didn't think they were failing. They worked. They earned. They saved something. They assumed it would add up, but it didn't add up to 7 figures. That gap between what people assume and what actually happens is what we're breaking down today. Why 97% never retire with $1 million. And more importantly, what separates the 3% who do. And before we go further, if you're serious about building wealth the slow, intelligent way, not chasing trends, not gambling on hype, but understanding how money actually compounds over decades, hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel grow. And if you stick around, this might change how you think about your entire financial timeline. Now let's define something clearly, because this is where people already get confused. When we say retire with $1 million, we are not talking about net worth on paper. We're not counting your home. We're not counting your car. We're not counting the small business you hope to sell one day. We're talking about money inside retirement accounts, 401s, IRAs, Roth IRAs, money that is liquid, investable, and designed to produce income when you stop working. Because here's the simple truth Peter always writes down on his clipboard. Retirement isn't about assets you own. It's about income your assets can produce. You can't withdraw your kitchen remodel to pay for groceries. You can't live off Zillow estimates. And unless you plan to sell your house and rent forever, home equity doesn't automatically fund retirement. So when we isolate retirement accounts, the money that actually matters for income, the numbers get serious. Only about 3% of retired households in the United States have $1 million or more in retirement savings. 3 out of 100. That data comes from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, one of the most reliable snapshots of American household wealth. And remember, that's households. Married couples combine totals. If one spouse has $600,000 and the other has $400,000, that counts as reaching the milestone. If you're single, there's no combining. It's just your number. Now here's where the contrast gets sharp. The median retirement savings across all households, meaning the middle point where half have more and half have less, is around $87,000. Not $870,000, $87,000. That means half of households in America have less than that saved for retirement. At age 30, that might not sound catastrophic. At age 60, it changes everything. And it doesn't dramatically improve as people approach retirement. Households in their late 50s and early 60s, the group standing right at the edge of leaving the workforce, have a median retirement balance of about $185,000. Let's apply a conservative withdrawal rule. Using roughly 4%, that generates about $7,400 to $8,000 per year before taxes. That's not financial freedom. That's supplemental income. At that stage, compounding doesn't have time left to perform miracles. The runway is short. The snowball has either grown large enough by then, or it hasn't. And for most households, it hasn't. So what happens? People delay retirement longer than planned. They depend heavily on Social Security. They downsize. They cut discretionary spending. They quietly adjust expectations. And the surprising part? Many of them earned decent incomes over their careers. Many thought they were on track. Which brings us to the illusion. On the surface, becoming a millionaire seems easier than ever. Asset prices are higher. The stock market has trended upward for decades. Homes have appreciated. Salaries have risen in nominal terms. Headlines constantly reference million-dollar valuations as if they're ordinary. So why isn't 1 million in retirement accounts common? Why are 97% falling short of that mark? Because rising asset prices don't automatically translate into rising retirement balances. Inflation raises expenses at the same time it raises asset values. Lifestyle inflation absorbs salary increases. Market volatility scares people into pulling out at the wrong times. And perhaps most importantly, consistent long-term investing requires a psychological discipline that most people underestimate. The majority don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because small financial decisions compound in the wrong direction for decades. And that's the part most people never see clearly until it's too late. But before we move further, understand this. $1 million is still a meaningful milestone. not because it makes you rich in a flashy way, but because at a 4% withdrawal rate, it can generate around $40,000 per year before Social Security. Add average Social Security benefits, and suddenly you're looking at an income that can realistically sustain a modest but stable retirement in many parts of the country. That's why this number matters. It's not about luxury yachts, it's about optionality, security, time, and yet 97% never reach it. The question isn't whether that number is possible. The question is why so many intelligent, hardworking people miss it, even in one of the wealthiest countries in history. And to understand that, we need to look deeper at what actually derails people long before retirement ever arrives. Now, here's where the conversation usually shifts. People say, yeah, but inflation makes it impossible. And they're not wrong, at least not entirely. Rent goes up, groceries go up, gas, insurance, healthcare, all up. So what happens? The amount left over to invest shrinks. And when your margin shrinks, your investing becomes inconsistent. You skip months. You lower contributions. You tell yourself you'll catch up later. Peter writes this down a lot. We don't fail because we don't understand math. We fail because life gets expensive. Inflation creates a psychological squeeze. It doesn't just raise prices, it raises stress. And stressed people don't invest aggressively. They play defense. So yes, in one sense, reaching $1 million today requires more discipline than ever. But here's the paradox. At the exact same time inflation makes it harder to save, markets are also compounding in the background. Asset prices rise. Corporate profits grow. The stock market expands over decades. So it's both easier and harder at the same time. Easier because capital compounds, harder because expenses compound too. And the 3% are the ones who manage to keep investing consistently while everything else is trying to pull their money away. Now let's talk about what $1 million actually means in retirement, because this is where people either dismiss the number or misunderstand it completely. Using a 4% withdrawal guideline, a $1 million portfolio can generate roughly $40,000 per year before taxes, adjusted for inflation over time. On its own, that might not sound glamorous. It's not yachts and private jets. It's not luxury Instagram retirement. But retirement isn't about flash. It's about stability. Now add Social Security. The average benefit is roughly $24,000 per year per person. That means a single retiree could realistically be looking at about $60,000 to $65,000 per year in total income. A couple? Closer to $80,000 to $90,000 combined. Suddenly, this doesn't look like barely enough. It starts to look like sustainable. But here's the key variable: housing. Housing quietly determines whether retirement feels comfortable or stressful. If your mortgage is paid off, that $60,000 stretches much further. If you're still renting at high rates or carrying a large mortgage into retirement, the same income feels tight. Two retirees with identical portfolios can experience completely different retirements purely because of housing costs. And this is where context matters. The average household in the US spends close to $80,000 per year. But that includes families with kids, larger homes, education expenses, commuting costs. Retired households typically spend closer to $60,000 annually. So when you combine $1 million plus Social Security, for many people that's not luxury, but it's security. It's the ability to cover core expenses without constantly worrying about market swings or unexpected bills. It's being able to replace a car without panic, handle medical costs without fear, say yes to a small trip without guilt. That's what the 3% are really buying. Not status, stability. Now zoom out for a second. When you're early in your journey, when your net worth is $5,000 or $20,000, $1 million feels fictional. It feels like a different universe. Saving $500 a month feels like throwing pebbles at a mountain. Even $1,000 per month feels insignificant compared to seven figures. At that stage, progress is slow and almost discouraging. Your contributions matter more than your returns. The account grows in tiny, unimpressive increments, and this is where most people lose patience, because compounding is invisible in the beginning. A $50,000 portfolio growing at 10% adds about $5,000 in a year. That's nice, but it doesn't feel life-changing. A $500,000 portfolio growing at 10% adds $50,000 in a year, without you increasing your effort at all. Same math, different base. And this is the part almost no one emotionally understands early on. The math doesn't accelerate. The base does. By the time you approach $1 million, market growth can start contributing more annually than you personally invest, sometimes more than you earn at your job. And that's when wealth stops feeling like something you build and starts feeling like something that builds itself. But getting to that phase requires surviving the long, boring middle, the years where nothing looks impressive, the years where friends upgrade cars and homes, the years where you question whether consistency even matters. The 97% usually don't blow up financially. They just stop pushing during the slow phase. And the 3%? They endure it long enough for the base to get large. That difference doesn't show up in year 1. It doesn't show up in year 5. It quietly reveals itself in year 15 and 20, and that's where the real separation happens. And here's the part most people misunderstand. When someone finally hits $1 million in retirement accounts, it looks sudden from the outside. 1 year they're at $820,000. A few years later they're over $1 million. It feels like a leap. But it wasn't a leap. It was layering. Layer after layer of contributions. Year after year of time. Decision after decision that didn't look impressive in the moment. Peter doesn't circle one lucky stock on his clipboard. He circles consistency. The early years build discipline. The middle years build size. The later years reveal compounding. That's the sequence. In the beginning, you're building the habit. In the middle, you're building the base. At the end, the base starts building itself. And that's why the milestone feels sudden in hindsight. Not because something magical happened, but because the compounding curve finally bent enough to become visible. $1 million isn't insurmountable. It's what happens when patience outlasts doubt. It's what happens when you don't quit during the boring middle. And this is where we need to reset the narrative. $1 million in retirement isn't about luxury. It's about control. It's about waking up and not needing permission from an employer. It's about knowing your basic lifestyle is covered. It's about not feeling panic when the water heater breaks. It's about handling a medical bill without unraveling your plan. It's about replacing a car without financing it at 9%. It's about saying, "We're okay," and meaning it. That's what the 3% are actually buying. Time, freedom, stability. If you're already there, if you're part of that small percentage, you might shrug and say, $1 million doesn't go as far as it used to. And you're right. Inflation has eroded purchasing power, but let's be honest. 7 figures in retirement accounts still represents decades of intentional behavior. It usually means you consistently invested $500, $1,000, sometimes $1,500 per month, even when it wasn't exciting. It means you passed on certain upgrades. You didn't always drive the newest car. You didn't chase every trend. You stayed invested when the market dropped 20%, 30%, sometimes more. While others panicked, you stayed boring. And boring wins in compounding. It means there were nights you tracked expenses instead of scrolling. Times you negotiated a raise instead of accepting the first offer. Maybe even periods where you picked up extra work not to impress anyone, but to accelerate the base. It means you watched your portfolio grow slowly while friends appeared to be living louder, and you trusted that the quiet path would eventually compound. Hitting $1 million isn't one big heroic move. It's hundreds of small, almost forgettable decisions. Choosing to invest instead of upgrade. Choosing long-term over immediate. Choosing your future self over social comparison. That's the real separation between the 97% and the 3%. It's not intelligence. It's not access to secret investments. It's sustained discipline. And here's the final truth. Most people don't miss $1 million because they're incapable. They miss it because they underestimate how long the middle lasts. They quit during the flat years. They slow down during the boring years. They assume it's not working right before it starts working. The 3% simply stay long enough for the math to reveal itself. So the question isn't whether $1 million is rare. We already know it is. The real question is whether you're willing to endure the years where it doesn't look like you're getting anywhere. Because if you are, the curve eventually bends. And when it does, it won't feel like luck. It will feel like proof. Proof that time, discipline, and consistency were working the entire time. The 3% didn't do something flashy. They just didn't stop. If this changed how you think about your own timeline, hit the like button It genuinely helps the channel grow. And if you want more clear, rational conversations about money and the real phases of wealth, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.